Today I want to talk about trusting the wisdom of our higher consciousness and how that can materialize physically in our lives in literal miracles of synergism and move you towards your goals. You set those goals, and then your higher consciousness causes things to happen. It's really amazing. So first, each of our minds are made up of three separate levels of consciousness. And I got to review this a little bit because not everybody understands what I'm saying if I don't define that there are three. Psychologists think we have two things. We have a conscious and a subconscious, but they have trouble recognizing the fact of the superconscious. Well, let me define the three. First is the waking consciousness, and that's our ego. It's the part of us, the consciousness, that does our thinking and controls our actions here in the physical reality. I'm going to touch my head. There's my ego that says I'm going to touch my head. Now the ego has that goal, and then the subconscious makes my arm move because my consciousness doesn't even know how that happens. How do I make the signal for those muscles to move there and touch my head? Our consciousness doesn't really get that. The science has trouble with it even. But I just do that, okay? I set the goal in my thinking consciousness, and then my subconscious makes that happen. And so let's talk about the subconscious. The subconscious mind, among other things, runs our body. It makes our heart beat. I don't consciously say, okay, now heart beat. The subconscious reminds us to breathe. Now I can make a deep breath. I can decide I'm going to have a goal. I'm going to have a deep breath. And so then my subconscious makes me use the diaphragm to bring that air in. I don't say, hey, diaphragm, let's do this. The subconscious does that. It's a separate entity. It's a separate consciousness. It's not my thinking mind. It's not my ego. The subconscious also organizes the digestion of our food. If you think about it with your thinking mind, just how do you digest your food? You stuff it in your mouth and it comes out the other end. I mean, how do you do that? And your conscious mind doesn't do that. Your subconscious does that. It tells our immune system to allow those bacteria which help our digestion. We couldn't digest anything without a whole bunch of bacteria that live in our body. And our subconscious tells our immune system, allow those bacteria, I need them. And it also tells our white blood vessels to attack those microbes which cause disease like COVID-19 or cancer or whatever causes the diseases. It attacks the microbes, the things that are affecting our mitochondria, the bacteria that get into our cells and cause disease. It tells our white blood vessels, white corpuscles in our blood, to take those things and kill them. And that's what our T cells do. They go after the stuff and kill it. Our subconscious controls that. We could be sending our T cells, white blood cells, to kill the bacteria that we use for digestion. And then we couldn't get any energy out of the food we eat. It would just pass straight through. But because of that bacteria, and because our subconscious allows that bacteria to live, see, we can't explain this with our thinking mind, can we? But our subconscious does it without us thinking. It automatically does it. It also controls the gene expression, what your DNA does, how it causes proteins to be made for the cells. It controls the gene expression. Disease is not caused by the microbe. The disease is caused by the gene expression that microbe influences. And it's your subconscious that controls that. A subconscious can say, I'm not going to be influenced. I won't catch that disease. We can show you by taking saliva samples from people that every one of us has every one of the yellow fever and everything else floating around in our saliva. Polio, it's all there, but we've trained our subconscious not to respond. We do that through various, sometimes chemical means, sometimes with inoculations. but we've trained our subconscious not to respond to those germs. And we all have germs floating around in us all the time that we're not responding to. And I'll get into that in another whole nother sermon, talking about how we take on disease. But it controls that gene expression. So if you can change your mind about the disease, like I don't have the disease, it can go away. The subconscious can make it go away. The problem is sometimes we wish we didn't have the disease, but we really don't believe that we don't have it. And that's a whole nother story. Again, how do we convince ourselves? How do we break the habit of being ourselves? But the subconscious does all this through no thought of our waking mind. Indeed, our waking mind has no idea how this stuff is done. I hope the food I ate yesterday is digesting. I hope it doesn't just sit in my stomach and become a rock. It's all done by bacteria, which my subconscious allows to exist and decides I want to attack that bacteria. I need that one. And the third part of our mind is our superconscious. Traditionally, this part of our mind has been referred to by creative individuals as the muse. And to those artists, poets, architects, and inventors, the superconscious has always been an unlimited source of knowledge, which is freely shared through us through the ESP of our intuition. So inventors and artists and poets, they go inside and they come up with the idea, the poem, the literature, the story, the novel they're going to write. They come up with things like the Tesla car and SpaceX, and the idea of he wants to go to Mars. Where do they get these ideas? They come from the muse, the higher consciousness. That's what it's always been called. Now, that superconscious is sometimes called our higher mind, our higher consciousness, our higher power. And it's made up of a conglomeration of our guides and guardian angels, but it also includes the surviving consciousnesses of our departed loved ones. Now, that's really important. What makes up our higher consciousness? It's not just floating around out there. It's part of the one consciousness, the universal consciousness that makes up the whole world. And I talk about each of us being a very small little consciousness, a little grain of sand. But if you bring all that sand together and make a big beach full of many grains of sand, billions of grains of sand, you have a superconscious that's so powerful it knows everything. Well, that's the one consciousness. And our higher consciousness, made up of our departed loved ones, our guardian angels, and our guides, is the conduit through which we communicate with that one consciousness, that big consciousness. Our group of guides is our superconscious, our higher power, which communicates with that. And that's how it's done. It's always done through individuals. This is a very important thing. Everybody thinks, I can do it by myself. Well, that's just the ego speaking. When you set aside the ego and surrender to the higher power, you realize we all do this together. And without the together, we aren't going anywhere. It's a together thing. And that's another important aspect. And when I work with a medium, and when I work as a medium and bring a spirit through for a sitter, this question comes up. Who is it that we are actually communicating with on the other side? Are we hearing from our departed loved one? Are we hearing from angels? Or just communicating with our higher power? Are we talking to God? Or am I, when I'm doing mediumship, am I just pretty good at imagining and reading the sitter through my own ESP, reading their mind? What's really going on here? Our scientific world wants to know what's really going on. And I personally am quite involved in trying to find that out exactly, so we can explain it in some kind of terms that make sense to our waking consciousness. I honestly believe, after all my personal experience as a medium over the last 15 years, and including my research and training at Morris Pratt Institute, at Lily Dale, and 5 weeks of courses at Arthur Findlay College, in Stansted, England, in evidential mediumship, that I am actually, when I'm being a medium, I'm actually communicating with the surviving consciousness that is the spirit or soul of that departed loved one that I'm describing. I'm not just tapping into an information source. I'm actually getting all my information through that surviving spirit. And that's what those spirits always communicate to me, that's who they are. They don't say, hey, I'm the one consciousness talking to you. They say, I am this departed loved one, this individual. I am the surviving consciousness of this individual. That's what they tell me. And I further believe that these spirits of our departed loved ones move on to become our guides or guardian angels. The best explanation I've found for this is what Emma Harding Britton actually said on May the 3rd, 1871. She was a spiritualist born here in the United States and moved to England. Emma Harding Britton, if you haven't read about her, it's a fascinating read. You can look her up in our spiritualist literature. She gave us this principle from which she received from Spirit. And the principle was this: I believe in the communion of spirits as ministering angels. They're not just guardians, they minister to us. They send us those synergisms, those miracles. In the United Kingdom, the Spiritualist National Union later adopted her statement as their third principle. I believe in the communion of spirits as ministering angels. Later, about 1964, they changed that word as to and, A-N-D. That changed the whole meaning. I believe in the communion of spirits and ministering angels. Well, when you say as, it's saying the departed loved one becomes the angel. And if you say and, it's saying that the angel is a separate entity and not one of our departed loved ones. So that's a major doctrinal problem there. And for a church, spiritualism that wants to have no dogmas, it's terrible to have a dogma, and that becomes a dogma. I like what was given through mediumship to Emma Harding Britton as ministering angels, that our departed loved ones become our guardian angels. The Spiritualist National Union in Great Britain also defines angels in agreement with Emma Harding Britton's original statement. Quote, as spiritualists, our definition of angels is that they are a spiritually evolved intelligence, either incarnate or discarnate, which aids the soul of another. Now, if you think about that for a second, that says incarnate, that they could be physically alive, or discarnate, that passed on in the surviving consciousness. So that means not only do our departed loved ones become our guardian angels, but it also means the person sitting right next to us may in fact be an angel, even though they're a living person. And they've already evolved to being that angel. And sometimes these angels come along and they just help you, and you say, I can't believe that person did that. Why would they do it? Because they're an angel. They're already evolved that far. This is an important concept when you're considering the people around you. See them as what they are. If they're not already an angel, they are, in this physical life, an apprentice angel. They are that important to you. So don't see them as, oh, that person who didn't do whatever it was you didn't like about them. Instead, see them as an apprentice angel, learning their trade through the struggles that they have. And if you realize they're an angel, aren't you going to help them and love them and hold on to them and do everything you can to assist them? It really changes your perspective when you're looking at them that way. Instead of thinking, it's a stupid kid on a skateboard. No, it's an angel, an apprentice angel, learning his lessons. And maybe he has to wreck his skateboard against a brick wall and break his arm in order to learn one of his lessons. So don't hold that against him. See him as an apprentice angel, learning his lessons. See him as what he is. So this allows an angel let's go back to the higher consciousness. This allows the angels, who are our guardian angels, to be a discarnate relative. Of course, here the qualifying element is that they are spiritually evolved intelligence. And not all discarnate relatives will be spiritually evolved enough to qualify as a guardian angel. Although I see that kid on the skateboard as an apprentice angel, I probably don't see him as my guardian angel. I'm probably not going to go to him for advice. Okay, but I do see him as an angel, an apprentice angel in training. So how do we get in touch with that superconscious? Each of us can approach our higher consciousness, each of us can approach our higher consciousness or our superconscious, which is actually our personal steering committee. You know, we're having a board meeting this afternoon, and the board for the church for Celebrate Life is the, quote, steering committee. We decide, what are we going to do? You know, where do we go from here? What do we do now? And that's what the board does. That's why we meet, to figure out whatever little problems we're faced with at the moment. And that's a steering committee. Your higher consciousness is your own personal steering committee. It can show you the best route. You sitting there thinking, I don't know what to do now. I don't know where I should go next. So meditate, and your intuition will bring it to you. Your higher consciousness will tell you, here's the best thing to do. Go in this direction, take this step. Of course, we always want to know, well, where's that going to get me? Well, that doesn't work that way. The intuition tell you, take this step. It doesn't tell you what the result is going to be, because your waking consciousness might not like the result, but it is the best, your highest good coming out of the result. And your higher power will say, take this step. And so you go take the step. So our higher consciousness is the conduit through which we approach God. And it is how we access the universal consciousness. But it is through the individual surviving consciousnesses of our departed loved ones, who are now our guardian angels, that we come to this one consciousness, the big universal consciousness. We don't just go there directly. We go through our guardian angels, our guides, our higher consciousness. That's the conduit that we use. It's the telephone that we use to get to the higher consciousness, which you call God, or the universal consciousness, the one that creates the plants and the animals around us, creates our whole universe. That consciousness, we approach it through our guides, our guardian angels, those who know just a little bit more than we do. Okay? And what we need to do here is to trust our guardian angels, to trust our higher consciousness. We need to stop trying to do it ourselves and instead surrender the ego and trust providence, or what we call source, to supply our needs. If we try to do it ourselves, we'll envision the answer, and that answer we envision is limited. It's not unlimited. You say, well, I'll get on the bus and I'll go downtown. Well, maybe a friend could drop by and give us a ride in their car, and that would be even easier. They could drop us off right where we're going. But when we decide I'm going on the bus, we just ruled out the friend giving us a ride. Well, there's a million ways to get downtown. Uber could show up. I mean, so whatever way we pick, we make a bunch of limits, and we try to control it. We made a small thing out of it. It could be something much bigger than that. We have to allow those bigger things to happen by not trying to control everything. And that's where we surrender the ego. We stop trying to have our waking mind solve all the problems. And so how does that work? Now I got to find it. That higher consciousness can share its wisdom with us. And by trusting it to provide all our needs, miracles begin to happen. if we just recognize those miracles for what they are. Sometimes a miracle happens, we don't even see it. One of the miracles that happened this morning was the sun came up. Now the clouds have covered it, so maybe I don't see it, but it is out there. The sun is out there. It was a miracle that happened this morning. Rain also came this morning that watered the plants. That's another miracle. These things we don't even ask for. We don't even see them, and they're happening all the time to us. Okay. So I want to tell you about what happened recently for me. I could have said it in the gratitude, but I decided to hold it for this. So I have a yacht, a sailboat, and over time, I decided that it needed to have a ladder for this after hatch. The hatch is above the double bed in the aft cabin, and it goes. It's up there, but there's no ladder to get up to it. You can open it up, and it opens up in the quarterdeck where everybody sits and everything, and it's really nice access. But there's no ladder. Never has been a ladder. It wasn't designed in the boat. Well, I'm a naval architect, so of course I figured out how a ladder could fit there. And a ladder like that would cost about $1,500, and it needs to have stainless steel tubing that holds up these teak steps that are varnished. It's quite a system, about $1,500, maybe $1,700, depending on who I would buy it from. And we would have to order it. It has to be a certain size, just exactly to fit from the deck to that hatch at that angle, and all of that. So my ego was looking around and found a wonderful ladder online. It was a wooden ladder, which you'd call a library ladder. They didn't have them in two-story libraries where the books are way up there and you have to go up the ladder and get to them, and they usually roll down and you move them around. But it was all, those are made, I could buy one, but they're all wood. And those are $700-800. And then it wouldn't quite be what I needed. I needed stainless steel and a varnished teak like the other ladders on my boat, so it would match everything else. And this wooden thing I was plotting up, my ego was plotting, wasn't going to be the answer. So I kind of left it be and didn't worry about it. But I had established that goal in my mind. I need this ladder. So I established the goal. I didn't specifically go and ask my higher consciousness to solve this problem. I just let it be. I established the goal. So Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday a week ago or so. Yeah, it was about Tuesday a week ago. I went over to Blue Pelican. It's a store in Alameda that has a lot of used boat parts, everything you can imagine. And I had looked at ladders there before, and they never had anything I wanted. They had little short things, and they were never stainless. They're always wood, and there was a bunch of problems with them. They weren't what I wanted. And I actually went over there to look at some teak wood because Gail wants me to make another box for one of her trees. We keep all our trees in great big planter boxes, and I make them out of teak so that they last forever. And so I was going over there to see if there was some spare teak, some lumber I could use. Well, there wasn't any teak. But on the way to the teak, I have to walk by where they keep ladders. And just kind of staring at me was exactly what I wanted. I had my tape measure with me. It was exactly the right size. It was stainless steel tubing with the teak. Okay, the varnish needs to be redone and all that. It needed to be, sanded and revarnished because it hadn't been well taken care of, but it's in perfect condition. Just an old used one. I have to varnish it up. And there it was. So I looked at it, and it had a tag on it, said $300. And $300, but it was exactly what I wanted. I'd never seen one before. It just appeared from nowhere. Okay. So I took it over to the register and I set it over there. And I said, yeah, I'm going to get that. And I went around and looked for some other things that I might want. And I came back. I mean, it's a huge store. It's got huge, lots of floor space with lots of stuff in there. Anchors and motors and everything you can think of for a boat. So I come back over and I said, so I'm going to get that. I pulled out a credit card. And so he starts punching in the computer. And what's the deal? The price is right on it. That's what it costs. It's printed out, labeled, they've stuck on it. And he said it'll be $200. He's looking at a $300 label and he says $200. I said, okay, sold. I'll take it. $1,700 thing for $200 and not even looking for it. There it is. You call that synergism? You call that providence? Oh, it just happened. It was a coincidence. Nah. I envisioned exactly what I wanted. I set that goal. I didn't worry about it. I was there for another reason. And here it is. Hello. Here's what you're looking for. It just floats up there. Those are called a miracle. Now, this happens all the time in life. We don't recognize it in miracles. We say, oh, I was lucky. No, it was coincidence. I've never seen a ladder like that before for sale anywhere. I established the goal and it arrives in its own time. Things take time. I didn't get it the week I thought of it. I've been planning on it for months, but there it was. Never seen one there before. I've been to these kind of used boat part stores in San Diego and Los Angeles, all over the place. Never seen one. There it was. Exactly matches my other ladders on the boat. How'd that happen? This kind of stuff happens all the time. That's just one example, something I'm very grateful for. Oh my, isn't that great? And so I got it for, if they sell for $1,700, I got it for $1,500 less than what it would have cost. And I would have to go find it. And I had to wait and have somebody manufacture it. And there it was, waiting for me. That's the kind of stuff that happens when you set a goal and let your higher consciousness solve the problem. Let your higher consciousness know what your goals are. You don't beg them, oh, please let me have. If you beg and say, oh, please let me have that, it's like you think you're not going to get it. So you're begging. Just establish your goals, share them with your superconscious, and watch the miracles happen. Okay, so that higher consciousness is the conduit that can bring you these things. You just have to recognize them. And okay, so I get lost in my notes. Yeah, I write the thing and then I go into my notes. So who makes up this higher consciousness? How does that actually work? Now, you've all heard of Charles Darwin, the guy that went to the Galapagos, and then he came up with the theory of evolution. And we had fun going to Galapagos in January and seeing some of the stuff that he did there and how he figured this out. But most of you have not heard of Alfred Russel Wallace. Alfred Russel Wallace was a guy that worked with Darwin to develop the theory of evolution. A lot of people think he should have published, and Darwin published before he did. So Darwin got the credit, but Alfred Russel Wallace had been working on it for 20 years and just didn't think about, oh, he didn't have the big ego to think, oh, I should publish and get this before somebody else does. He's also sort of a spiritualist. His viewpoints are, agree with spiritualism. And here's what he said. Perhaps the divine ground, it means that what makes up the universe, the universal consciousness, is how we would say it today, instead of divine ground. The universal consciousness, perhaps the universal consciousness, which is God's ultimate unity, is ours also. He's saying, perhaps the universal consciousness is also our consciousness, those grains of sand on the big beach. That's what he's saying right there. is ours too, so that the finer essences of our being, the finer parts of us, are but the coarser and more apprehensible essences of his own. He's saying that the finer parts of us, the good parts of us, are the coarser or more harder, more physical parts of that consciousness. We're the grains of sand. That's really what he's saying, that make up the beach. That's the major consciousness. Wallace thought that he could best account for miracles not by a solitary God who sat out there at a great exchange of the universe running the whole thing, but by the law of telepathy, ESP, and cooperation of spiritual beings in a vast unseen kingdom of God. Now, what he's describing there is surviving spirits who are a great big operating army that works for God, and that they do things. And he says, whether therefore we think in terms of extrasensory perception and the powers latent in man that he does it, which transcend our space-time limitations, in other words, which don't agree with materialism, even while we remain in our physical bodies. So he's saying, so while we're still in, we might think that all of this is done by ESP taking place in our physical bodies. But whether we turn our attention to the activities of discarnate spirits, that's our departed loved ones, think about their activities, who have attained freedom from the body of this death. They've taken off the body, and they're no longer limited by the body and the physical aspects. They're have more freedom than we do, because they're not restricted by what they can do with their hands and the tools that they build. They can do much more. And he says both of these roads, whether we think one way or the other about this, lead inevitably to the idea of there being intermediary, invisible beings, though angels, departed loved ones. They're between us and the major consciousness. They are our conduit to get to what we would call God, okay? And he says, this truth must be fearlessly faced. We need to look at the fact. This is Alfred Russel Wallace. This is the co-inventor of the theory of evolution. And he's saying all of this takes place through a group of individuals who are our conduit to get to God. That's our higher consciousness. It's made up of our guardian angels. What Emma Harding Britton said, she says, I believe in the communion of spirits as ministering angels. A communion, we talk to them through our mediumship. We approach them through our intuition, through our meditation. We get information from them because they are ministering to us. Their purpose is to minister to us, not just send us messages on Sunday. They're to minister to us. They want to help us. But to do that, we have to surrender the ego. We have to let go of our I'm going to do it myself attitude. Instead, we have to rely on them, and they will minister. They will send us a ladder. We don't have to go order it and have it made and pay $1,700 for it. They'll send it to us. It'll just walk up there and say, hi, here I am, hello. That's the kind of thing that happens. There's little miracles that will happen in your life when you surrender the ego. Stop trying to do it all yourself. Stop trying to take the credit. Well, I did this. No, the universe gave it to you. Thy will, not my will, be done. The universe gives you things. The universe showers blessings upon you. You've got oxygen to breathe. Take a deep breath. It's right there. You didn't even have to go find it. You didn't have to get this morning. Where am I going to get some oxygen? Oh, what am I going to do? I got to find some oxygen. I hope there's some. We could get real into our ego, couldn't we? No, the oxygen is right there. It's a free gift. It's a miracle. We don't recognize it as a miracle. What if all the oxygen just appeared and all we had was nitrogen to breathe? Oh my, we'd suffocate in a couple of seconds. It's a free gift, a miracle every day. It's a miracle. When you sit there and say, oh, well, I expected oxygen. After all, it's me. Think about the arrogance of that. I expected oxygen. No, say, I'm grateful. I got oxygen to breathe. I'm alive. I'm grateful that I'm alive, that I that I'm allowed to have this physical life here. I believe in the communion of spirits as ministering angels. They will minister to us, and all we have to do is see them as ministering angels. See our higher consciousness for what it is. Our higher consciousness is those spirits we're talking to. They're alive. They're still working. They're still thinking. And their purpose is to minister to us, to take care of us. So I better be quiet so I can do my mediumship. I can go on and on about this stuff. That's what your higher consciousness is, and you need to rely on it. You need to release your ego, go into meditation, and leave the ego behind. Go into deep meditation, and all of your answers will come in your intuition, and then they'll start to show up physically in your life, like that ladder. Here it is. That's what you were envisioning. There it is. It's yours. I'm going to leave you with that, and then we'll go into